Chapter 1. Sign that IN system activated. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. In the Heavenly Saint dynasty, the Holy Master ascended the throne and became the Emperor. It was the year 356 when the imperial examinations were held across the dynasty. In the magnificent hall, there were coiling dragons standing in all directions. The golden dragons were lifelike with their heads pointed towards the sky, as if in the next second, they would rush to the sky and roar. Emperor Xing Yuan looked at the people in the hall. The crown he was wearing was made of the night pearls of the East Sea, which added an extra layer of dignity to him. The others were all intimidated by the emperor's might and did not dare to look him in the eyes with the exception of one person, Lin Ran, who remained perfectly composed. He did not expect that after he was reborn, not only did he transmigrate to the fantasy continent, but he also came top in the martial arts examination. "Why are you staring at me like that?" Emperor Xing Yuan's voice pulled Lin Ran back from his thoughts. On the other hand, the others were shocked. It had to be noted that staring at the emperor intently was a serious offense. For a moment, the hall fell extremely silent. Lin Ran said neither humbly nor arrogantly, "I'm really excited to be able to see you today, so for a second, I forgot about manners. Please forgive me, Your Majesty." Emperor Xing Yuan sized up the young man in front of him. He was handsome and gave people an impression of being a scholar. Compared to the winners of the past martial arts examinations, he was really one of a kind. No offense taken. Today's civil and martial arts palace examination was surprisingly good. Lin Ran, the winner of martial arts examination, is undoubtedly a talent of the dynasty. In the future, he will be put in an important position. The moment the emperor finished speaking, many people looked at Lin Ran with envy. From the looks of it, Emperor Xing Yuan was clearly very satisfied with Lin Ran's reply. After all, everyone liked bootlicking including emperors. Lin Ran did not know why, but he felt that the emperor in front of him was too feminine. However, he did not dare to say this out loud. Should he have done so, he would certainly have ended up being beheaded. There were still many things to deal with after the new emperor ascended the throne. After saying a few words of encouragement, Emperor Xing Yuan excused himself and left the rest to Li Tianyi, the imperial butler, to handle. Li Tianyi was a senior elder of the three dynasties and a person who used to serve Emperor Xing Yuan's father. Therefore, he had a lot of power in his hands. Emperor Xing Yuan trusted him a lot and even entrusted the task of distributing imperial jobs to him. Treasures were sent to Li Tianyi in bulk by those who wanted to seek a good position in the palace. Lin Ran looked at these people who had an ingratiating and fake smile on their faces and felt speechless. It seemed that the way of the world was extremely important no matter where it was. However, the original Lin Ran came from a poor family. He relied entirely on his own strength to reach his current position. "Lin Ran, His Majesty favors you a lot, so he wants you to guard Mount Sword." Everyone was in an uproar. Why is it that place? Mount Sword was the holy land of the Heavenly Saint dynasty. There were countless divine weapons hidden inside. It was very difficult for ordinary people to get close to it. It sounded like a good job, but the truth was that it wasn't. To put it bluntly, Lin Ran would just become a mountain guardian and his official career would come to a halt from the get-go. Logically speaking, since Lin Ran came top in the martial arts examination, he should be appointed as the Imperial Guard. It wasn't hard to guess that Li Tianyi must have done something to stop Lin Ran from climbing up. Li Tianyi said with a fake smile, "This is a good job. You have to do your best. Don't let His Majesty down." Many people looked over at Lin Ran with sympathy. The winner of the martial arts examination who was envied just now by everyone had fallen to such a state in the blink of an eye. What a tragedy. Mount Sword is located in the middle of nowhere. Not a soul would ever pay him a visit in this lifetime. He's finished for good. Although he just won the examination, in the end, he's doing worse than us. Lin Ran did not mind the post he was about to take on. He accepted whatever that was given to him without a grudge and quickly set off for Mount Sword. The mountain range was lush and covered in layers of clouds. The cliff top was like a sharp blade that was hidden in a scabbard, making people feel pressure just looking at it from afar. Lin Ran stood at the foot of the mountain and felt that the sky above him was split into two by the sharp cliff tops. There were also many black spots scattered across the mountain range. When one got closer, one could see that they were all swords. Even the air was filled with sword intent. The eunuch with low cultivation did not dare to walk further in with Lin Ran. Just go in yourself. Someone will meet you there and tell you what to do. After saying that, the eunuch scurried away. Lin Ran looked around to find no one around him. The sudden voice startled him. Are you the new mountain guardian? When he turned around, he saw a white-browed old man in a tattered Taoist robe. Lin Ran didn't notice the old man approaching at all. He was slightly shocked and found that the old man seemed to be blind. He said calmly, yes. The old man didn't ask why Lin Ran was here. He said indifferently, follow me. Including you, there are 3 guardians here. The blind old man seemed to have not spoken to anyone for a long time. His voice was a little hoarse. Your job is to guard Mount Sword in case anyone trespasses. Also, you have to wipe the spiritual swords. Remember, you can't wander around. This is crucial because if you do so and fall into danger, no one can save you. Seeing that the old man was serious and didn't look like he was joking, Lin Ran nodded seriously. He thought that this would be an easy job, but he didn't expect it to be life-threatening. I'll tell you about your monthly work. You just have to complete it. I'm surnamed Li. You can call me Taoist Li. Taoist Li brought Lin Ran to the spiritual sword and gestured for him to give it a try. Lin Ran had just picked up the spiritual sword and was about to wipe it. Ding! Congratulations to the host for activating the Sign.in system. Location detected. The host is in Mount Sword, do you want to sign in? Chapter 2. Good heavy swords are blunt. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The series of notifications stunned Lin Ran, who was standing rooted to the ground. As a game player in his previous life, how could Lin Ran not know what Sign.in was? Apparently, it was true that when God closes one door, he opens another. He wasn't doomed. Can I get a reward as long as I sign in? The system will give you a notification when it is time to sign in. You can obtain a reward by wiping swords. Different swords have different rewards. If you wipe your sword at a special time or place, you will also receive a special reward. It turned out that he could only sign in at a given time. Naturally, if he could sign in all the time without limit, the rewards in the system would probably be emptied. However, even so, Lin Ran was satisfied. Thinking about how he could get a reward just by signing in and wiping swords, he felt that it was no different from a free lunch. Can I sign in the same location? Yes, you can. After getting the answer from the system, Lin Ran was relieved. If he was asked to sign in at a different place, wouldn't he have to travel all over the world? It was definitely unrealistic for him now. Seeing that he did not move and seemed to be in a daze, Taoist Li could not help but ask, what's wrong? Only then did Lin Ran come back to his senses and suppressed the excitement in his heart. Nothing. I want to walk around alone. Taoist Li did not stop him. He only instructed Lin Ran to not go too far. Mount Sword is enormous. There are many empty houses. You can find one to cultivate. After giving a few more reminders, Taoist Li quickly vanished in thin air just like the way he appeared. What a spooky old man, Lin Ran couldn't help but mutter. Taoist Li said that there were 3 people stationed there, but until now, he hadn't seen the third person appear. Perhaps the third person was cultivating somewhere, or perhaps he was a loner and did not want to see strangers. Since the system said that the rewards for wiping different swords are different, and I can't sign in every day, I have to be careful with choosing the sword I wipe. As Lin Ran walked around Mount Sword, he was dazzled by the sword stretching out to as far as the eye could see. He realized that the deeper he went, the sharper the sword intent. However, after being warned by the Taoist Li, he did not dare to go too far for the time being. Mount Sword had a history of a few hundred years. It was said to be established by the founding emperor, Emperor Tiansheng. The first sword buried here was Emperor Tiansheng's beloved sword. Later on, he collected many divine swords, which was why Mount Sword had its current scale. It was called Mount Sword, but more precisely, it was a sword tomb. Apart from the imperial mausoleum, it was the holiest place in the dynasty. This place was open, flat, and deadly quiet, devoid of even the singing of birds and the chirping of insects. It was as if any noise, no matter how loud, was blasphemy to this place. Lin Ran had the delusion that he was the only one left in the world. As if being pulled by magnetic force, he walked mechanically ahead with a frown. The pitch-black sword was made of top-grade black jade and iron. Under the sunlight, it flickered with a mysterious luster. The black iron heavy sword in front of him was more than 2 feet long. The blade looked wider than usual, but it was by no means sharp and even looked a bit blunt. Good heavy swords are blunt, Lin Ran muttered to himself. Formless. He slowly read out the name of the black iron heavy sword. As if the two of them had reached some kind of agreement, the spiritual energy in the surrounding fluctuated strongly, and an invisible force connected the two of them. He might have been hallucinating, but he felt a buzz in the air, as if it was a response from the sword. Lin Ran subconsciously opened his arms as a chilling sword energy swept past him, but it carried no killing intent. He felt like he was just greeted by an old friend. It was a special feeling that was indescribable. Congratulations to the host for successfully signing in and obtaining the formless sword body. The notification that rang in his ears snapped Lin Ran back to reality. Formless sword body. What was this? A beam of golden light entered the space between Lin Ran's eyebrows. Lin Ran felt his body tremble as if an electric current was running through him, causing him a burning sensation. At first, it was bearable, but gradually, the pain intensified. Sweat broke out on Lin Ran's forehead, and he looked like he had been drenched in water. Even his face turned ghastly pale. It was as if countless swords were shuttling back and forth through his body, stirring up all the nerves and cells. It was more excruciating than being tortured to death. Even his vessels were filled with sharp sword intent. At this moment, he was like a small boat in the ocean at the mercy of the overpowering sea waves. Lin Ran sat cross-legged to focus his attention. He gritted his teeth as his consciousness gradually became blurry. In front of him, countless sword shadows appeared and surrounded him. Bomb! An ear-piercing sound of explosion echoed through the mountain range before it quickly went away. It came and went so fast that people thought they were hallucinating. In the deepest part of Mount Sword, a pair of eyes opened calmly. They were filled with supreme dignity and pressure, as if they could determine the life and death of a person with a glance. However, the eyes quickly closed again. No one knew where this pair of eyes came from. Taoist Li also seemed to have sensed something, but he did not find anything unusual and did not take it to heart. After an unknown period of time, the pain Lin Ran felt gradually dissipated, replaced by a warm current that slowly flowed through his body, filling him with indescribable warmth. When Lin Ran regained consciousness, a horrible stench overwhelmed him. After seeing the situation in front of him, he took a deep breath. Damn! What the hell is this? Chapter 3. Second sign that IN, 3 Essence Sword Technique. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It was no wonder Lin Ran was so surprised. Anyone who saw themselves covered in dirt would find it difficult to calm down. At this moment, he was so dirty and smelly that it was as if he had not taken a shower for a century. The first level of the formless sword body transformation. Lin Ran took a deep breath and immediately went to find a lake to wash up. At this moment, he felt his body was filled with strength. Previously, he was under pressure when facing the sharp sword intent of Mount Sword, but now, he was probably able to walk all the way to the depths with ease. To outsiders, these sword energy could inflict great harm. If they stayed in such a place for too long, their bodies would probably be corroded. However, to Lin Ran, all of this was not a problem. Instead of being harmed, he felt like soaking in a hot spring. It opened up every pore on his body, making him quite comfortable. This place is perfect for cultivation. After Lin Ran's body underwent a transformation brought about by the formless sword, he could now use the sword energy of heaven and earth to help him facilitate cultivation. In the future, no matter what kind of sword technique he practiced, he would be able to master it quickly. It was equivalent to taking a shortcut and reaching the finishing line while others were still at the starting line. This was the advantage of the formless sword body. Lin Ran could help but wonder. At the first level, I'm already so powerful. What will happen if I cultivate it to perfection? He found a quiet place and began to cultivate. Other than guarding the mountain and wiping the swords, there were not many things to do in Mount Sword. Besides, the spiritual swords did not need to be wiped clean every day, so Lin Ran was free most of the time. After patrolling around the mountain and occasionally wiping the spiritual swords, as were instructed by Daoistly, he would be able to get off work and devote the rest of the day to cultivate. Mount Sword was an important place for the royal family where ordinary people were prohibited from entering. In addition, Daoistly rarely showed himself. Sometimes, Lin Ran had the illusion that there was no one else on Mount Sword except him. It was simply too liberating. He could do whatever he wanted and be a free bird. If Li Tianyi was here, Lin Ran would definitely thank him genuinely for giving him such a good job. Lin Ran focused on cultivation. Although his days were boring, they were very fulfilling. With no one to disturb him, he could concentrate. In less than a month, he completely mastered the sword body. On this day, Lin Ran sat cross-legged and meditated as usual. As if sensing something, he slowly opened his eyes. This time, he heard faint footsteps behind him. You've done a job this month. You adapted quickly to the work at Mount Sword. As expected, when he turned around, he saw a white-browed old man. Daoistly was still wearing the same old Daoist robe and he was as unpredictable as always. However, this time, Lin Ran was very calm. The sword body made his 5 senses extremely acute. It wasn't exaggerated to say that nothing within 100 kilometers could escape his eyes and ears. This was the second time Lin Ran met Daoistly. It had only been a month but it felt like a lifetime ago. Lin Ran said very humbly, "Thank you for your guidance, Daoistly." Daoistly nodded and handed Lin Ran a jade token. With this token, you can go into Mount Sword to take a look. As I said, don't go too deep lest you put your life in danger. Lin Ran took the jade token. He did not know what material the jade token was made of, but he felt that it was slightly cold to the touch. On it was a sword-shaped symbol that looked very exquisite. Thank you, Daoistly. Being allowed to go into Mount Sword meant that his workload had increased because he had to wipe more swords. However, Lin Ran was actually excited about it. The deeper he went into Mount Sword, the better the quality of the spiritual sword would be. This meant that the reward for signing in the future would be even greater. It was another opportunity for him. Daoistly did not stay for long. After giving a few more instructions, he left again. Lin Ran was already used to him coming and going like a ghost. After Daoistly was nowhere to be seen, Lin Ran couldn't wait to go into Mount Sword. As expected, the pressure here was stronger, but it posed no threat to him. If Daoistly was here, he would definitely be surprised because Lin Ran didn't use the power in the jade token. All kinds of spiritual swords came into sight. Surrounded by them, it felt like he had entered a world of swords. He was an intruder in this world that belonged only to swords, but the formless sword body could allow Lin Ran to blend in very well. It was as if he had been one of them all along. The white sword shone brightly like the Milky Way was contained within. Lin Ran was instantly attracted to it. The sword hilt was engraved with the pattern of the sun and the moon. It was natural and filled with indescribable Tao runes. 3-Essence Sword. Looking at the extraordinary sword in front of him, Lin Ran couldn't help but reach out to touch it. Congratulations to the host for successfully signing in and obtaining the 3-Essence Sword technique. After a month, the system notification sounded again. A book that was glowing with divine light appeared in Lin Ran's hand and quickly entered his body. What followed a feeling of weightlessness was Lin Ran's soul being pulled into the void. Chapter 4. Strange Roar, the mystery at the top of Mount Sword. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the vast void, Lin Ran was as small as an ant. What appeared in front of his eyes was a sky full of stars, as if he could touch the stars and the moon as long as he stretched out his hands. Lin Ran was attracted by this magnificent world, but in front of the celestial objects, his strength was nothing. Soon a surreal scroll laid flat in front of him. The sword technique book was divided into 3 chapters. Starlight, Moonlight, and Sunlight. As if being pulled by a force, Lin Ran reached out to touch the scroll. Immediately, the light blue starlight exploded in front of his eyes and then condensed into a ball and entered his body. The impact felt like an asteroid had just exploded. With Lin Ran's current cultivation, he could only cultivate the first chapter, but this chapter was already very powerful. This world was not like the fantasy world he knew. It was divided according to the strength system. The basics were commoner, martial artist, and martial master. Above that were the senior martial master, grandmaster, senior grandmaster, half-saint, and saint. There were 9 levels in each realm, but it was rare to see anyone reaching the realm above grandmaster. It was said that after reaching the half-saint realm, one could feel everything in the world, and after reaching the saint realm, one could even shatter the void and ascend. However, these were all legends. To date, the strongest person on this continent was only a grandmaster. They were basically ancestors who had lived for hundreds of years. They were in seclusion in the mountains and forests and did not interfere in the affairs of the mortal world. Just one grandmaster alone could wipe out an entire city. In the past, when the 2 countries fought, the experienced cultivators they sent out razed dozens of cities to the ground at the drop of a hat. Later on, it was only with the help of a senior grandmaster that the battle was called off. Even so, both sides still suffered heavy losses. Lin Ran could feel the 3-Essence Sword technique circulating in his body. He took a deep breath and slowly opened his eyes. His dark eyes seemed to encompass the entire Milky Way. He casually picked up a branch from the ground and swept it across the air. The sharp sword intent being let out seemed to be able to cut the air in half. With a rumbling sound, a huge rock that was more than half the height of a person was cut off from the cliff top and rolled down into the abyss below. Even Lin Ran himself was shocked. I'm actually so powerful now. The power of the 3-Essence Sword technique really exceeded his expectations. Cultivating the starlight level to perfection was comparable to the cultivation of a grandmaster, the moonlight to a senior grandmaster, the sunlight to a saint. Lin Ran couldn't help but sigh. So coming out top in the martial arts competition just makes me an elite among the commoners. Now, he had just entered the realm of martial master and was already so powerful. He did not dare to imagine what kind of terrifying power those senior martial masters and grandmasters would have. It seems that I was too ignorant before. Although this world was not a traditional fantasy world, it was still vast and unfathomable. It was best not to underestimate anyone. Although the highest cultivation level ever reached was that of senior grandmaster, who knew if there would be a half-saint hiding in this world? Lin Ran was a little smug when he obtained the formless sword body, but now, his attitude had changed. He knew that there was always someone better. If he became complacent because of this, he would probably die without knowing why. However, Lin Ran was not afraid by any means. After all, he had the help of the sign in system. He was confident that he could become a senior grandmaster or even a half-saint. After all, before this, he was just a nobody. In just a short period of time, his cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. With this thought in mind, his mentally changed and he felt that he had risen to another level. Time spent in the mountains flew. Lin Ran spent most of his time cultivating every day. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. The sun, moon, and stars, infuse me with your power. As Lin Ran shouted out, countless rocks exploded instantaneously. He swept his sword across the air, releasing tens of thousands of blades. The spiritual swords nearby buzzed in response. At this moment, Lin Ran was like an unsheathed divine sword. He didn't use all his might. Otherwise, the spiritual swords at the foot of Mount Sword would definitely start buzzing too and alert Taoist Li's attention. The boulders and cliffs were all covered in sword marks. These were the evidence of his tireless training every day. If a sword master were here, he would definitely be shocked. This was because these sword marks were stable and powerful. Only after decades of practicing would one reach this level of mastery. In just a few months, Lin Ran had done what others couldn't in their lifetime. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was a genius. Of course, this was also thanks to the formless sword body. No matter what sword technique Lin Ran learned, he could quickly master it. Moreover, his 1 day of hard training was equivalent to 100 days of hard training for others. Roar! A roar came from the top of the mountain. It came and went so fast that Lin Ran almost didn't notice it. Lin Ran suddenly stopped in his tracks and said thoughtfully, "It's this sound again." Previously, he thought that it was the commotion caused by the wind blowing past the mountain. After hearing it a few times, he felt that it did not seem like it was caused by the wind. It sounded like a dragon's roar, but it was weak. Moreover, this sound would only occasionally be heard when he was practicing swordsmanship, which puzzled him even more. Lin Ran fixed his gaze on the top of the mountain that was covered in thick fog, making it hard to see what was on it. There was also something mysterious about the mountaintop as the pressure up there was the strongest. What exactly is there? Chapter 5. Terrifying Cultivation Speed, 9th Level Martial Master. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lin Ran had already completely mastered the Starlight chapter and was at the 9th level of the Martial Master realm. He vaguely felt that he had reached a plateau. He was just a step away from entering another realm, but he couldn't take the step no matter what. Something was missing, and it wasn't something that could be obtained from training. Perhaps, Lin Ran thought, he needed an opportunity of some kind. Lin Ran was very curious about the top of Mount Sword. When he was about to wipe the sword, he stopped. With a strike of his sword, the huge rocks shattered, destroying the deep sword marks. If one did not look carefully, one would not be able to find out that someone had once practiced swordsmanship here. Although no one would step into Mount Sword without permission, Lin Ran was still cautious and did not want anyone to know his true strength. Otherwise, such a profound sword technique would definitely be coveted by many people. After all, he had yet to meet the mysterious third person that Taoist Li mentioned. Today, I'm going to see what's on the mountaintop. One of the forbidden areas Taoist Li mentioned included the mountaintop. However, because of that strange sound, Lin Ran felt compelled to get to the bottom of it even if it meant putting his life at risk. The main peak in front of him was the highest peak of Mount Sword. The sound came from above. Looking down from above, the entire peak looked like a sharp sword that was inserted into the center of Mount Sword. The sword intent in the air seemed to be able to materialize. Even the spiritual swords here were filled with murderous aura. Lin Ran realized that the sword intent of the spiritual swords was the weakest at the outer layer of Mount Sword. However, the deeper one got, the more murderous aura they emitted. If it were him 3 months ago, he would definitely not be able to withstand such pressure. Even with his current cultivation and the help of the sword body and the jade token, after taking only 100 steps, his chest became heavier and heavier, and his breathing began to quicken. Lin Ran frowned. Something is unusual here. He originally thought that he should be able to walk freely on Mount Sword now. After all, he was by no means weak. However, after walking a few hundred meters, he felt as if a huge rock was chained to his ankles, forcing him to slow down. Lin Ran took another small step forward under the huge pressure. In an instant, a terrifying pressure suddenly pressed down on his shoulders. Beads of sweat instantly appeared on his forehead, and a deep pit was formed under his feet. Is this area protected by a formation? At this moment, he was still some distance away from the top. It seemed to be within arm's reach, but it was actually far away. Lin Ran wanted to continue on, but unfortunately, he couldn't withstand the pressure. If he continued in, the pressure would probably crush his bones before he reached the top, so he had no choice but to give up. It seems that I underestimated Mount Sword. Lin Ran was certain that there was something on the top of this main peak. Otherwise, it wouldn't be filled with such pressure. I'll come back one day. He couldn't afford to be careless. After all, he would remain in Mount Sword for the foreseeable future. There was no need to take such a big risk now. Just as Lin Ran was about to return, he caught sight of a slender sword and was instantly attracted to it. Compared to the other swords that were emitting a murderous aura, this sword in front of him was especially gentle like a gust of wind. If one thought that it was harmless because it was gentle, they would be wrong. As Lin Ran reached out to wipe it, in the next second, a sharp wind blade carrying strong force swept past him. Fortunately, it did not hurt Lin Ran at all. What a special sword! Congratulations to the host for successfully signing in. You have obtained sword flight. Hearing the mention of sword flight, Lin Ran knew that it was something good. When he opened the technique book, he was stunned to see blank page after blank page. Why is that? A row of faint words appeared on the top of the book before slowly dissipating into the air. It turned out that there was a requirement to cultivate this technique. It required one to first reach the realm of senior martial master. Because his cultivation was not high enough, he could only see blank pages. In the second peak of Mount Sword, multicolored light intertwined like a golden dragon swimming through the clouds. With the cry of a dragon, the sword intent broke through the endless clouds, causing the red sun to finally break free from the shackles of the sea of clouds. Sheathing his sword and returning it to its sheath, Lin Ran did everything to perfection. On the top of the mountain, the silhouette of a figure could be seen standing at the edge, looking into the yonder. It was Lin Ran. He let out a long sigh as he looked at the setting sun. The world fell into a silence again as he walked down the mountain slowly like an ordinary person. No one could tell that it was him who was causing that impact just now. Now looking back, I realized it's already been a year. A year passed without him even noticing it. The 4 seasons came and went without affecting Mount Sword much. It looked just like the way when he first came here. He originally thought that it should be easy to break through from the 9th level of the Martial Master realm to the Senior Martial Master realm. After all, he was only a level away. However, he did not expect to be stuck at this bottleneck for a year. Actually, this was very normal. After all, it was a watershed. Some people would be stuck at a bottleneck for 100 years, while others could be immediately enlightened and enter a new realm. All of this depended on fate. From a commoner to a 9th level martial master, no one across the continent could have repeated what Lin Ran had done. If word got out, it would probably cause a sensation. Even the most famous sword genius could not achieve what Lin Ran had, but he still felt that it was too slow. Seeing that he was not making any progress, he said to himself, maybe I should take a short trip outside the mountain. I might find something new. With this idea in mind, he, for the first time in a year, stepped out of Mount Sword. Chapter 6. Not on the same level. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As expected of official Zhou. In just a year, you have already become a 4th grade Imperial Guard. With how much His Majesty trusts you, I believe that you will be promoted soon. When you reach a high position, don't forget about us. In the Imperial Garden, a few people were walking in groups of few. The man being discussed was wearing a purple gold crown and a sea python robe. He looked proud and condescending. In my opinion, the position of the winner of the martial arts examination should be given to you. What right does Lin Ran have to claim the first place? I heard that he's still a mountain guardian in the middle of nowhere. Hearing his name, Lin Ran couldn't help but stop in his tracks. Zhou Hao's face immediately darkened, clearly a little unhappy. He was in the same batch of contestants as Lin Ran. However, Lin Ran came out first while he only got second place. People would remember the champion by heart, but they would soon forget the runner-up. This was a thorn in his heart. Even though Lin Ran was not doing as well as him now and was gradually forgotten by everyone, hearing this name mentioned still stung him quite a bit. It reminded him that he was a runner-up. The lackey at the side could tell that Zhou Hao was displeased at a glance. He glared at the person who spoke just now. You ignorant thing, don't talk nonsense. Lin Ran is not worthy of being mentioned in our conversation. After saying that, he spat on the ground. He was just lucky. Hearing this, Zhou Hao immediately felt much better. Seeing this, the rest of them started belittling Lin Ran even more enthusiastically. What can he do on Mount Sword? I'm afraid he'll remain a petty and insignificant mountain guardian for the rest of his life. He's not even worthy of carrying official Zhou's shoes. With official Zhou's current cultivation, he can easily squash Lin Ran with a finger. I think we should suggest to His Majesty that the winner of the martial arts examination be replaced. Otherwise, our heavenly saint dynasty will be embarrassed. The few of them went on taking delight in demeaning Lin Ran. Lin Ran's expression was indifferent. Zhou Hao was only doing well because of his good family background and his connections. It was said that Zhou Hao was born in a bureaucratic family, and his ancestors were the founding statesmen of the Heavenly Emperor. The Zhou family had been around for 100 years and had accumulated a lot of influence as well as wealth. This was probably the reason why Zhou Hao's official career had been smooth sailing. Just as he was about to leave, Zhou Hao and the others noticed his existence. Stop! Who are you? Why aren't you bowing to official Zhou? How dare you slight him? Zhou Hao felt that this stranger's back looked familiar. When Lin Ran turned around unhurriedly with perfect composure, everyone was dumbfounded. It's actually you, BDNVLDM. Zhou Hao and the others looked at each other and sneered. I was wondering who it was. So it turned out to be the former winner of the martial arts examination. Why aren't you guarding Mount Sword? What are you here for? Lin Ran could tell at a glance that among these people, Zhou Hao was the strongest. Until now, he was only a commoner and was no different from back then. If Lin Ran wanted to, he could deal with him with a finger. However, he couldn't be bothered to do that. After all, an elephant wouldn't care about the provocation of an ant. Zhou Hao, on the other hand, did not know the strength of the person in front of him. The two of them were not on the same level. Lin Ran was many levels higher than him, so he naturally couldn't notice it. Moreover, Lin Ran intentionally restrained his aura, which gave Zhou Hao the illusion that Lin Ran's cultivation had regressed. I didn't expect Brother Lin to have weakened so much after not seeing you for so long. It's really a pity. You have to know that His Majesty once praised you in the throne room. I wonder if he will regret saying what he did when he sees you. Zhou Hao perfectly demonstrated what the frog in the well knows nothing of the great ocean meant. He had no clue as to the extent of Lin Ran's ability. How about this? If you beg me, perhaps I can put in a good word for you in front of the emperor and help you leave that place where even bugs don't go. What do you think? Zhou Hao said sarcastically. At this moment, he felt extremely satisfied. This is simply ridiculous that you came out first in the martial arts examination. You are probably the most down-and-out champion in history. Everyone burst into laughter. Lin Ran didn't flare up at all even after being belittled and ridiculed by them. On the contrary, he looked at the clique with sympathy in his eyes. These people were not even qualified to be his match. In the past year, Lin Ran had been molded into a person with a calm temperament through quiet cultivation day in and day out. His cultivation level was completely beyond what these people could imagine. For the sake of comparison, if these people were still at the foot of the mountain, Lin Ran would have already reached the peak. To him, wealth and fame meant nothing. The only thing that mattered was cultivation. Moreover, there was always a higher mountain. The peak he reached was only the beginning. He had to reach the peak of the martial world and look down on all living beings. These people thought that they could be smug just because they had higher positions than Lin Ran. They were really short-sighted. However, that was perhaps the only thing they could be proud of in their lives. Zhou Hao felt uncomfortable under Lin Ran's gaze. Lin Ran was clearly the loser who had nothing, but Zhou Hao actually had the illusion that he was the one who should look up to him. Why was he intimidated by a loser? Zhou Hao immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. He released his aura to scare Lin Ran. What kind of attitude is this? In Lin Ran's eyes, this was like a baby gently stomping its feet in front of a giant. Not only was it not lethal, but it also looked comical. Chapter 7. Wiping the sword heart and successfully reaching the new realm. You are listening at novelfull.audio. However, when Lin Ran shot Zhou Hao a look, Zhou Hao was instantly stunned on the spot. He could not quite describe that gaze with words, but the defense mechanism told him that he was in danger. He was stunned by the trace of aura released by Lin Ran. In an instant, Zhou Hao felt that countless sword energy was surrounding him, ready to stab him into a sieve. Almost every hair was standing on end due to fright. He felt like being targeted by a ferocious beast. As long as Lin Ran wanted to, he could kill him with a glance. However, the people beside Zhou Hao did not feel it. It was obvious that Lin Ran's control of his sword energy had improved greatly to the extent that even some grandmasters couldn't achieve. Lin Ran quickly looked away. Other than Zhou Hao, no one else could feel it. Zhou Hao, for some reason, had a feeling that he had just survived a disaster. When he came back to his senses, Lin Ran was already nowhere to be seen. Zhou Hao's back was already drenched in cold sweat, and he felt like he had just been pulled out of the cold water. Why are you sweating so much? The lackey beside him said ingratiatingly, Official Zhou, that brat actually walked away without greeting you. He doesn't take you seriously at all. Do you want us to catch him and teach him a lesson? Zhou Hao felt weak all over. If not for the fact that he was holding on with all his might, he would have collapsed to the ground. He was in no mood to find trouble with Lin Ran and only glared at the lackey, signaling him to shut up. Let's go. The lackey was puzzled. He did not know what he had done wrong. Neither of the two parties noticed that there was a pair of eyes in the dark that were observing everything. After Lin Ran returned to Mount Sword, he felt that something was about to come out of his body. He was just a step away from entering the gate of Senior Martial Master, but he couldn't take that step no matter what. Ding! It is time to wipe the sword heart. While Lin Ran was meditating with his legs crossed, the system notification sounded again. Ever since he obtained the sword flight technique last time, the system had been quiet. Lin Ran almost thought that the system went kaput. Otherwise, why was there no response no matter how he called out? Now after receiving the notification, his attention was caught on the words, wiping the sword heart. So sword heart can also be wiped. Lin Ran had wiped many swords, but this was the first time he attempted to wipe the sword heart. He was curious about it. Congratulations, host. You have successfully signed in and obtained the enlightened sword heart. In an instant, a refreshing aura surged into his entire body. Lin Ran felt as if he was being cleansed by water. All the dust was wiped away, and he felt unprecedentedly relaxed. Everything that confused him suddenly became clear, and a new world unfolded in front of him. Enormous sword energy flowed through his vessels and veins. Lin Ran had never been so sober-minded. It felt as if his heart had opened up so vastly that it could contain the entire world. What was the sword Tao? What was the martial Tao? He suddenly heard a voice speaking to him. It was deafening and made Lin Ran stunned on the spot for a long time. This moment felt like a century. He saw a sword rising from the ground and shoot into the sky, cutting through the sky and illuminating the chaos. It came from the void and crossed time and space. Nothing could stop this earth-shattering sword. It was indestructible and had been there since time immemorial. In an instant, Lin Ran was overcome with excitement. The earth, the heaven, the sun, and the moon, please be my witness. Here, I shall obtain this sword, and with this sword, I will bring justice back to the mortal world. As if in response to his words, countless spiritual swords on Mount Sword buzzed. Even the dragon roars from the top resounded through the mountain range. This time, the roar was more deafening than ever. However, Lin Ran was immersed in the joy of reaching a new realm, the realm of Senior Martial Master, with the help of the enlightened sword heart. Although it was just a level difference between the 9th Martial Master and Senior Martial Master, the difference was humongous. The strength Lin Ran could unleash now was far superior to what he was capable of a while ago. As a result, Lin Ran could also fly on his sword. If he did not take the initiative to show his strength, mortal martial artists would not be able to notice it. On the other side, Daoist Li's expression was solemn. The commotion at Mount Sword just now attracted his attention. He suddenly leaped up. The first thought that struck him was that something had happened at the top of the mountain. Just as he was about to go up to take a look, he seemed to have thought of something and stopped in his tracks. No, Master instructed me not to step into the forbidden area. Daoist Li looked at the mountaintop worriedly. Seeing that there was no commotion that followed, he was finally relieved. With Master around, there shouldn't be a problem. He walked down the mountain, still looking worried. As he got older, he felt he was no longer up to take this position. Perhaps it was about time someone else took over it. There was nothing bad about making early preparations in case of emergencies in the future. Daoist Li turned around without warning and walked in the opposite direction. Lin Ran did not expect Daoist Li to drop in on him suddenly. Just as he thought that he had concealed everything perfectly and that Daoist Li wouldn't find out anything abnormal, Daoist Li opened his mouth. I know all about what you've done. Lin Ran was dumbstruck, not knowing what to say. Chapter 8. Demon Subduing Tablet. What is the power of the 5 elements? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lin Ran felt his heart tightened. He thought that Daoist Li had discovered something. However, he had always been cautious. What mistakes could he have made that exposed him? Looking at Daoist Li's calm expression, Lin Ran sensed that he was probably at the 6th or 7th level of the Martial Master realm. Could it be that he was also hiding his strength? Just as Lin Ran was guessing. I know that you were originally the champion of the martial arts examination, but you ended up becoming just an insignificant mountain guardian. You were even mocked and looked down on by your former opponent whom you defeated. You must be indignant. The next second, what Daoist Li said relieved him. It turned out that he was talking about the incident in the Imperial Garden. Lin Ran did not expect Daoist Li to be there as well. Back then, Lin Ran indeed felt a gaze fixing on him and thought that it was just a passing palace maid or eunuch. But you also have a good mindset. You didn't give up on yourself or become hopeless. Daoist Li looked impressed. Although he couldn't see, he could feel that Lin Ran had done a good job. Even though Lin Ran cultivated diligently every day, he wasn't making any progress and had been stagnating for a long time. However, he didn't give up on himself and went on cultivating day in and day out. If Lin Ran knew what Daoist Li was thinking, he would definitely burst out laughing. His current strength was well hidden. Only a senior grandmaster could discern his true level of cultivation. What more, the few senior grandmasters known to the world were either cultivating in the deep mountains or in seclusion. How could they possibly show themselves in the secular world? You're not arrogant or impatient but are calm and composed. Even if you're humiliated, you can still maintain your composure. Very few young people are like you now. He let out a long sigh and continued, the mortal world is replete with all forms of temptations. Most martial artists are easily lost in it and forget the very reason for which they started cultivating. Those people are more like mortals than martial artists. Daoist Li did not know that Lin Ran was actually in a completely different realm than him. At this moment, he wanted to give Lin Ran some guidance. Perhaps Lin Ran was not as talented as others, but his mindset was rare among the new generation. Even if he was blind, he was by no means a fool. After observing Lin Ran for a year and seeing the interaction between Lin Ran and Zhou Hao, Daoist Li had a high regard for him. You've been wiping swords at Mount Sword for a year now. We're, in a way, destined to meet here in the middle of nowhere. Let me tell you something about the sword technique. Although Lin Ran was much stronger than Daoist Li, there were many things he might not know. Moreover, he had only been in this world for a short time, whereas Daoist Li had lived in this world for the better half of his life and was definitely very experienced. Lin Ran said humbly, that would be terrific. I'm all ears. Come with me. In silence, Daoist Li brought Lin Ran to walk along a small path. He remembered that this direction should lead them up to the mountaintop. Lin Ran followed behind with a look of surprise. He had been in Mount Sword for so long, but he didn't know such a path existed. As if he knew that Lin Ran was surprised, Daoist Li said, there are still plenty of miseries and secrets in Mount Sword that you will unravel one by one in the future. What Daoist Li said seemed to carry a double meaning. Lin Ran had a feeling that he was listening to the words of a dying man. As the two of them went deeper, the surrounding vegetation became lush. As far as the eye could see, there were nothing but towering trees that blocked that sunlight from seeping in, causing it hard to tell whether it was day or night. Lin Ran vaguely saw something in front of him. When he walked closer, he was surprised to find that it was a stone tablet that looked like it had been standing on the spot for centuries. Weathered by the wind and rain, it was overgrown with moss. In the middle under the moist moss, two words could be vaguely seen. They were probably words of the ancient language. Lin Ran didn't understand the meaning, but the handwriting was strong and powerful as if the words were carved instead of written. It was filled with an indescribable pressure and strength, making people afraid. Lin Ran even felt a special energy fluctuation from it that even he could not figure out. He was surprised to find that after living on Mount Sword for so long, he didn't notice such a place. It seemed that he had underestimated Mount Sword. Daoist Li had a complicated expression on his face. He carefully brushed away the fallen leaves and said, do you know where this is? Without waiting for Lin Ran to answer, he continued, this stone tablet is called the Demon Subduing Tablet. There is an array formation seal on it. Every once in a while, you have to reinforce this seal. So this was the Demon Subduing Tablet. Hearing this name, Lin Ran couldn't help but feel awed. Many questions popped up in his mind. Then what was sealed here? Could it be related to something on the mountaintop? He recalled the strange roars he had heard occasionally. As expected, Mount Sword was not as simple as it looked. There might be a huge secret hidden somewhere. This was probably the reason why Daoist Li told him not to wander about. The 5 elements sword technique is needed to reinforce the seal. Daoist Li's voice interrupted Lin Ran's thoughts. He couldn't help but ask, what is the 5 elements sword technique? The 5 elements sword technique contains the power of the 5 elements, namely metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. To perform it, a specific mahogany sword is required. In addition, the 5 elements divine stone is also needed to stabilize the core of the array formation. Just by listening to it, one could tell how complicated the procedure was. Even Lin Ran couldn't quite understand what Daoist Li was talking about. However, it wasn't hard to imagine that this array formation should be extremely powerful, and that the thing being sealed must be powerful too. He couldn't help but look up in the direction of the mountaintop. Chapter 9. 5 Elements Sword Technique. Power of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Now that you've been on Mount Sword for so long, it's time to bestow upon you the 5 Elements Sword Technique. If I'm not around in the future, you will be in charge of reinforcing the seal in my place. At this moment, Daoist Li had already treated Lin Ran as his successor. He had also been selecting a qualified successor in the secular world, but none of them had a character and aptitude comparable to Lin Ran's. If the 5 elements sword technique was mastered well, it could be deadly. If, by any chance, it fell into the hands of evil, it would bring about a bloody calamity to the world. That was why Daoist Li was so careful with choosing his successor. Daoist Li took out his sword. In an instant, a dazzling cold light flashed through the air, causing people who looked at it to shudder. It was obvious that this was a good sword, on par with those up in Mount Sword. I'll only demonstrate it once. You have to watch carefully. As for how much you can comprehend, it depends on your aptitude. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, the power of the 5 elements, listen to my command. Buzz. The moment he finished speaking, the sound of metal clashing could be heard in the air. It was as if a huge army was approaching, giving people great pressure. The power of metal was injected into the sword, and the spiritual sword became more powerful. It emitted a dazzling light that made Lin Ran subconsciously raise his hand to block his eyes. He couldn't help but praise. What a powerful sword energy! Daoist Li slashed through the air, and the sky immediately darkened, then densely packed with sword intent condensed from metal. The expanding sword intent interweaved into a huge net that covered the sky and the earth and was filled with a murderous aura. If an enemy was trapped in the net weaved by the sword intent at this moment, they would probably have nowhere to escape. Lin Ran thought that if it were him, although he could break free, he would probably have to pay a huge price. The power of metal is the most lethal and destructive element of the sword technique. It's the best when used against powerful enemies. Daoist Li explained as he demonstrated. In the next second, a huge tree rose from the ground, coiling around the sword intent with its branches. The power of metal slowly dissipated, turning into green light spots that scattered across the land, bringing with it vitality. The power of wood can provide you with energy to heal your injuries. The sky cleared up and a gentle breeze blew past the forest, causing the leaves to rustle. Suddenly, raindrops fell from the sky and condensed in the air. For some reason, the raindrops began to shake vigorously. Without warning, rain poured down from the sky, making the world covered in mist. It was hard to see anything clearly, and even Lin Ran found it difficult to recognize Daoist Li. Water benefits all things and fights for nothing. Lin Ran was shocked to hear Daoist Li's voice right by his side. He had no clue when he appeared beside him. Everywhere Daoist Li walked, water formed under his feet, allowing him to tread on air. With a shake of the sword in his hand, the world around them changed drastically again. A fire dragon roared as it flew past the sky, and its roar was deafening. The water vapor instantly evaporated. Lin Ran looked up at the sky to see 2 scorching suns hanging high. They turned the earth into a huge steamer. He felt his body was burning and his forehead breaking out in sweat. The power of fire is violent and difficult to control. You have to use it carefully, or else it will hurt you. As if to prove a point, gigantic fireballs exploded in the sky, and sparks flew everywhere. Countless fire meteors fell, and the heat they caused could melt a person almost instantly. Boom! The ground rumbled and shook violently. A few deep cracks emerged on the ground. Fortunately, Lin Ran reacted in time and jumped to the side. The earth wall appeared out of thin air and blocked the sparks from burning down the forest. The power of earth is extremely defensive. It often has unexpected effects in battle. Daoist Li tried his best to teach what he knew, but he did not know that his disciples' cultivation was much higher than his. Lin Ran praised, the 5 elements sword technique lives up to its name. If the 5 elements were used together or in specific combinations, it would have expected results. Daoist Li, as only a martial master, could already bring out so much power with this sword technique. If it were Lin Ran, it would be more so. Thank you for your teaching. Lin Ran bowed respectfully with a grateful expression. Daoist Li was worthy of his respect. The 5 elements sword technique was no small matter. It was even comparable to the ones he had obtained from the system. Daoist Li nodded. I've already finished demonstrating. Master it well. If there's anything you don't understand, come and ask me. After saying this, Daoist Li left with a gust of wind. Lin Ran was grateful that Daoist Li had given him a great opportunity. He picked up the branch on the ground and started practicing. Daoist Li did not go far when he heard a commotion behind him. He turned around and saw the water dragon and the fire dragon hovering above the mountaintop, splitting the sky into 2. The impact was so great that even the other side of the mountain was affected. He couldn't help but look surprised. It seems that this kid is actually quite talented. Daoist Li looked satisfied. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and looked at the mountaintop with a complicated expression. Chapter 10. A visit from an important guest. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ever since Daoist Li finished teaching him last time, Lin Ran hadn't seen him. Fortunately, with the help of the formless sword body, he learned everything very quickly, and the 5 elements sword technique was no exception. However, knowing the existence of the demon subduing tablet, Lin Ran would wander around there for no reason. Perhaps because of the invisible magnetic field, the aura emitted by the spiritual sword was especially powerful. Lin Ran had already taken a liking to a heavy sword. This sword was named Dragon Elephant. It looked ordinary, but it weighed 81 kilograms. It wasn't one that ordinary people could use. He wiped it carefully, as if what was in front of him was not a sword but an insurmountable mountain. At this moment, he felt weak. Congratulations, host. You have successfully signed in and obtained 30% of the internal energy of Dragon Elephant Divine Master. The reward this time was different from before. It was actually a transference of internal energy. Lin Ran was overjoyed. It had to be noted that he now had the formless sword body, the sword flight technique, the 3 essence sword technique, and the 5 elements sword technique. He no longer lacked anything offensive. This kind of internal energy was exactly what he wanted. An overwhelming force surged into his body, stimulating the acupoints. Lin Ran felt like he was caressed by a warm current that kept flowing back and forth through his vessels, making him feel hot and restless. It was a feeling indescribably by words. He felt like he had endless strength. Lin Ran subconsciously clenched his fist and smashed it to the side. With brute force, the boulder beside him shattered. Looking at the gravel rolling on the ground, even he was shocked. Lin Ran had the feeling that as long as he wanted to, he could smash a hole in the sky. Who exactly is the Dragon Elephant Divine Master? I only obtained 30% of his internal energy, but I'm already capable of shaking the earth. Lin Ran slowly opened his eyes and realized that at this moment, he had already reached the 9th level of the Senior Martial Grandmaster realm. The speed of his cultivation was simply unbelievable. It had only been a short while since he became a Senior Martial Grandmaster. If news of this spread, everyone would be amazed. No one on the entire continent could achieve it. It seems like it won't be long before I can break through to Grandmaster realm. Grandmaster was another watershed difficult to reach. After all, when Lin Ran was breaking through to the Senior Martial Master realm, he was stuck at the 9th level of the Martial Master realm for an entire year. However, if he could successfully advance to Grandmaster realm, not only would his lifespan be extended, but his appearance would also remain unchanged. To a certain extent, it was no different from obtaining the elixir of life. With that said, it was not easy to become a Grandmaster. It was complicated and required him to set up a relevant array formation. Looks like I have to collect some array formation tools when I have the chance. Lin Ran was not in a hurry. After all, he had just leveled up and had not completely gotten used to his new strength. It was better to be safe than sorry. With a good foundation, it was only a matter of time before he broke through. On this day, Lin Ran cultivated as usual, but he received a message from Daoist Li. There will be an important guest visiting tomorrow. You must prepare well. Remember. See to it that the guest isn't neglected. Lin Ran was baffled. What kind of an important guest would visit such a place? Although Daoist Li did not state the person's identity, from his tone, it was obvious that the person was not ordinary. The next morning, the two of them stood at the entrance of the mountain to welcome the guest. Lin Ran noticed that Daoist Li had changed his clothes and was no longer wearing the tattered Daoist robe. Lin Ran had been in Mount Sword for so long without seeing Daoist Li ever change his clothes. This was unprecedented. It showed that he took this matter very seriously. Lin Ran was really curious. After all, after so long, other than Daoist Li, he had never seen anyone else in the mountain. Who in the world would pay a visit to a place in the middle of nowhere? Lin Ran couldn't help but ask, "Who is it?" Daoist Li shot him a serious look. Lin Ran had never seen him with such a serious expression. Don't ask too much. You just have to remember to do more and talk less. Just follow behind me. Don't offend the guest. Otherwise, even I can't help you. As the two of them were talking, a group of people approached from afar. Although they were dressed in ordinary clothes and looked inconspicuous, their auras betrayed their extraordinary identities. The young man in the middle was dressed in black clothes with golden patterns of dragon embroidered on his chest and sleeves. He was handsome and outstanding. Although he kept a low profile, from the fabric and other accessories on his clothes, one could tell he was either powerful or rich. The guards around him had steady footsteps. Even though they didn't reveal their auras, Lin Ran could still tell at a glance that their cultivation was similar to Daoist Li's. They were at least at the 3rd or 4th level of the Martial Master realm. What surprised Lin Ran even more was that there were a few mysterious auras in the air that even he couldn't discern. If he hadn't advanced to the 9th level of the Senior Martial Master realm, he probably wouldn't have noticed it at all. The auras must be coming from someone among the guards. What was this person's background? He actually had such a powerful secret guard protecting him. Lin Ran was shocked. Daoist Li had already gone up to welcome him. Welcome. I hope that your journey here has been a pleasant one. Seeing that Lin Ran was still standing rooted to the ground, Daoist Li was a little anxious. He tugged at Lin Ran's sleeve to remind him of what he instructed him.